Josh, what is the meaning of life? And no, the answer is not hair products or shoes.
Recently, I actually saw a video that really illustrated, at least put into words, what I kind of already subconsciously believed. And the answer was internal self-respect at a very deep level. And I think you can branch that off to just about any other meaning of life that I've ever heard. If a lot of people will say love or happiness or friends, but I would say every single version of that stems from a version of self-respect within yourself. I don't think you can truly be loved or love yourself if you do not have a deep internal respect for yourself. And how do you obtain that? Through various activities that you would deem as triumphant. And when you overcome them, when you probably feel at your absolute best, is also the time when you have the most self-respect for yourself, or absolutely anything, any stem that I could think of for a offshore version of the meaning of life could all be stemmed from self-respect. Justin, I think, what are your thoughts?
Well, we were talking a little bit before we started, and like, if I had to sum up in one phrase, I would say maybe the search for truth or the pursuit of truth would be the meaning of life. The problem is like, it's a really in-depth and complex question. So it's a hard question. And
it's impossible. It's an impossible question.
Yeah. So there's that. I definitely think you're you tagging on to being true to oneself, or doing what you believe to be right, like following your moral compass in a sense, or, if you're religious, following, the search for God or search for truth or whatever, right? Just personally, I would view the concept of God and the concept of truth as being one and the same, but that's just, me speaking for me. I will also note too that when you look at like modern times, you almost have this divergence. You have this attack on the moral compass, and I think when people are fractured from the moral compass, like the moral compass never really goes away. But like if times are good, you can kind of like overdo it. I mean, the running joke I would say is that you can only do so many hookers and blow, in a set period of time before it's going to catch up with you. Yeah, it'll be fun from the get go, but the pleasure will be like saccharine sweet. It'll grow old after a while, especially if you feel like you're not being true to oneself. And yeah, you might be able to run from it, you might be able to hide it, you might be able to bury it. But again, Josh, very much to your point, you and you alone, are probably the best arbiter for yourself of whether or not you've been good or whether or not you've been bad. Now, just to be clear, we all make mistakes, but the point is that in the process of making mistakes, you have a system in place or not to learn from the mistakes so you don't make the same mistake again. So yeah, no, I think you had a very good definition there.
Yeah, certainly not my own, as nothing I have is original. Virtually everything that anyone has stems off of what someone else has done or said in the past, and that's just kind of a process of going through life. But let's kind of break this down a little bit further, and why when this person said this, I'll try and find a link to the video. It just clicked in my head, because when I was first searching and just trying to better myself in a sense, I was thinking, all right, I know what I don't want to be, but let's define some people or things that I would want to be like. And every single thing was like a protagonist in different animes that I used to watch, or people that were extraordinarily successful in different fields, but they all had similar attributes to themselves. And they would be things like extremely high integrity and had that moral compass where they would never fade away, or extreme hard work with passionate people, and things that I deemed as virtuous. I just tried to piece away that a bunch of these characters in different let's call it shows or movies had, that I thought I would like to have myself.
Yeah, just jump for a second. So we haven't done a video in some time, but when Bloom talks about enclosing of the American mind, what do you furnish a soul with? Remember, he uses that phrase or whatever, right? To actually like the ideals, the moral, the virtues to look to. I think what you're describing is exactly what Bloom's trying to describe. Now, obviously, Bloom says, just as you mentioned anime as being the closest thing that you found, Bloom says and laments that there's this great book tradition that we have, over the past, 2,000-3,000 years of humanity, cobbled together, that basically talk to, the soul and explain, what is not the right way to do things, but what is an ideal way to do things, or an ideal way to look at things. And so, it's interesting you say that, because I think that, the soul, cries out, especially when people are young and growing up, they're looking for, the truth, meaning, beauty, et cetera, whatever, right? And when you look around today, especially at the school system, and you just look at the utter paucity of information that there is, or of decent information there is out there, being substituted with, as, Bloom calls it, junk food for the soul. It's just... Or I think Besmoff talking about demoralization. There's another concept of you have this break, from, the internal moral compass and the search for virtue to this plastic, fantastic fear we have right here, which is fundamentally based on a lie, or I would argue.
So when you were saying that you think the meaning of life is trying to find the universal truths, can you expand on that much further?
Well, so I think the universal truth is one of those things. I don't know if you ever really like, or maybe if you're God himself, you'll be able to figure it out. I think the key takeaway here, it's the asking in a sense, like, could I be wrong about something, or always willing to hold that door open, or could I be maybe more right about something, or do I need to evolve? Like, it's just, I would say it's the spark of curiosity, and I would say it's the humility to realize that you might be wrong. And if you have those two things, you'll probably will go a long way. Now, granted, people will have their own strengths, their own weaknesses, whatever, right? We're all built to do different things, so we're not all going to be the same, thank goodness. But that's how I would define it. It's the humility to admit that you're wrong, and more importantly, to make corrections when you are. I mean, go back to this. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about this, but like think about the story of Cain and Abel. From way back in the day. It's the first two humans on the planet Earth. Adam and Eve don't count. God made them. So Cain and Abel, whatever, right? They both make a sacrifice. Abel's sacrifice pleases the Lord, Cain's it doesn't. And literal God comes down and talks to Cain, and Cain's like, why the F isn't my sacrifice working? And God's like, yeah, you know exactly why it's not working. So what does Cain do? Does Cain do, oh, thank you, God, so much for coming down from the heavens and letting me know exactly what's going wrong? I've seen the error of my ways, let me change it. Does he do that? No. He goes and kills Abel, and then, it's whatever. The point is that Cain would rather kill virtue, or virtue shames the wicked, as this is the first story about humans on the planet, where you have Cain killing his brother, who's doing it the right way, rather than Cain admit to himself he was doing it the wrong way. So
Yeah, I would say that you could also use that as the stem of self-respect, though, because if you're searching for truth, that kind of goes when you, let's say, find or think that you found a truth in there, you're staying to a very humble level to where you know that you could be wrong with just about absolutely every thought that you've ever had. That's staying respectful in your own sense. Today, it really bothers me because people. It doesn't even matter what the meaning of life is. It's just you have to have something that gives yourself meaning. But today, I mean, especially with my generation, people have zero meaning in absolutely anything. I know so many people who not only think that there is no meaning for life, but think that, oh, like we're just going to die anyway. So like, what does anything matter? And that is one of the hardest sins that you could possibly commit to yourself. Because then if you think that there's no reason to do anything, why do anything at all? And that's where we come to the conclusion that people are doing nothing at all because they see no purpose.
That's nihilism right there, or that's the doorway to nihilism right there. And the other thing about it too is that what people do try to use as meaning, it's ephemeral, it's artificial. It's like, oh, how many likes did it get on Instagram? How many likes did it get on Facebook, whatever, right? Like, no. There's no meaning in that. Or the meaning that people derive from that, it's synthetic and it's artificial, and it is by no means lasting, and by no means an accurate or by no means an acceptable substitute for the real deal.
Yeah, and a quote that, or a poor quote that I will use from Assassin by Doug Casey that I'm reading right now. The main character, Charles Knight, he was kind of talking to this girl and basically said most people have a front, the person that everyone around them and all their friends see. And that's great because you can get a lot of friends doing that. But what happens if you try and release that front and let someone actually see who you really are? Well, you're most likely not going to have those same friends because they were only with you for the person that you were putting on as your front. And more importantly, the people who you would actually want to be around would not want to be with you because all they see is the front. And that's, I mean, I can think of just about every single person that I went to high school with. You can see that. Even myself, you would put up this massive front that you want everyone to see, that you want to be perceived as, but it's almost never the person who you truly are. And how can you have any meaning in something if you aren't even yourself at its core?
Yeah. The immediate thing that comes to my mind is that there was a quote I read on a website a long time ago, but it stuck with me because I think it's important, is that men, particularly men, always need to ask, is this or is this not true? So there's the search for truth right there. But instead, many men fall into the trap of going the easy route, even if it's the wrong route, and asking, will others be okay with me thinking this? And that's, to your point, where you put up, the artificial facade. You basically kowtow your opinion to go away from the truth to what do I think other people will think of me, because, it's hard to speak the truth. You risk pissing people off. Prophets generally aren't thought of fondly, and never forget they put Socrates to death. So there you go.
And this all comes down to a form of self-respect within yourself. And that's why I think this is the best answer I've heard to that question, and at least the one that resonates with myself the most. I mean, it doesn't matter what resonates with you. It just, all that matters is what I consider the meaning of life, because that's at the end of the day all that matters. So if I want to achieve the ultimate form of self-respect within myself, because I think that will lead to the happiest life for myself and those around me, then how do I achieve that? And then that kind of leads into a different string of possibilities, but that would probably be a topic for another discussion.
Josh? Sounds good.